Good morning, everyone. My name is Tamás Harangozó from the European Basic Skills Network, and I'd like to welcome all of you for today's online discussion with the title Rooting Democracy and Active Citizenship in Adult Learning. Today, we are going to start with this live stream, which will last until 22:11. And then we are going to start our online forum discussion, which is already open. So to um, feel free to join and add some comments as we are discussing with our experts today. The discussion will last until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but you're more than welcome to post your comments, share insights, or any reflections that came up during the day or during the live stream. Our first expert, I'm really happy to welcome Niels Eik Zimmermann. Niels is joining us from Berlin on behalf of their network. Hi, Niels. Great to have you.
Hello, Tamas. Thank you for the invitation.
I understand their network is heavily focusing on active citizenship as a competence, but also democracy in general. Can you say a few words about what the network stands for and what the main project focuses are within the network?
Sure. So there, democracy and human rights education in Europe, that's the title of the network, and that's what you get when you see the DARE network. So we are basically a network of different organizations providing education for democratic citizenship, human rights education, democracy-related learning, media pedagogy, provision of any issues of socio-political concerns and of addressing the democratic culture in the society. So I'm explaining it a little bit broader because our understanding of citizenship and of democracy-related education is very often focused on the school context, and that's where a lot of our members are in, but mostly it is the non-formal educational field. So it's a mixture of different organizations of different sizes in Europe, but many of them in the non-formal educational field. Also many have strong connections to the formal education, teacher training, facilitator training, and also providing lectures, the sessions in schools.
Very interesting. So, besides school education, you also focus on adults, adult learning. In this part, can you tell us a few profiles from your projects? Some examples that you've been working on lately, and some outcomes you could share with us that are dedicated for adults, especially.
Yeah, for sure. So during the last time as a network, we were very much in contact, and that's a good tendency, I would say, with other networks or with actors, stakeholders that are focusing on other domains of adult education. So the digital citizenship education. So learning about digitalization was a topic in a project called digital transformation in adult learning for active citizenship, which we did 4 years ago. So now we are in a project that is addressing this in the youth field, but obviously it is we see the topic under a lifelong perspective and also the materials. Then we have had a recent project about VET and education for democratic citizenship, called LICEA, Linking Citizenship Education and Adult Learning, that closed in 1 year before. And so a project about the topic of what entrepreneurship education and citizenship education have in common. Many people think not much, and some politicians also try to bring them in competition. We would say the active component, innovating, engaging, civil courage, that is the big intersection here. Then, yeah, we can talk about the different activities for in the field of quality of pedagogy, where we are in contact and in steady exchange with the Council of Europe, the EU Youth Partnerships, for instance, and also with the stakeholders in the adult field, EAEA also, or lifelong learning platforms in Brussels, where we try to bring our topics in. Last but not least, yeah, we see that we are one of the few networks that are strongly advocating for the recognition of non-formal education and the qualities that are in non-formal education, since many that are in this education and training field, they are stakeholders that are dedicated mostly to formal education. That is shaping their mindset a little bit. Yeah.
That's very interesting, and this is maybe where the EPALE's community can also prove very relevant, and we may find your results very, very relevant for our audience as well. You mentioned a few very interesting projects, and of course, we chose today's topic because we saw it's a high relevance for our times today that are full of major changes, disruptions, economic, environmental. So addressing active citizenship, especially for adults and in adult learning especially, is vital for us this year and in our times today. Can you tell us a few success factors or how-tos? How can we successfully address this citizenship competence? These are also mentioned in key policies in Europe. Can you give us a few ideas about that?
So I think one issue is the understanding of learning itself. So it is not about validation measures of non-formal education. It is very much taking this idea of continuing learning serious. So if we see, and it is recognizing finally that we are in the adult education field, we have to deal with different biographies, different entry phases, with a bunch of competences and experiences that our learners have. And it is a little bit our job as facilitators and educators in this field to help the people to structure, to make sense out of that, to offer them tools for reflection, to offer them tools that make visible how different experiences from the past connect to things that are valuable in the present. And especially when did you learn the last time think of democracy and citizenship? It was probably not in a course, it was in an everyday situation, in a situation maybe in the metro, or when you in a somewhere where you have been in a meeting, or when you were talking with friends. These are the opportunities, and citizenship, if we want to teach that much better and support this idea of active citizenship, we should carefully connect and in a smart way connect non-formal education, informal education, and the formal education offerings. So not focus only on validation. It is really on a lot of working on self-recognition, on supporting people in transformation situations. And what makes EDC, Education for Democratic Citizenship, probably unique also in the adult field, now it is dealing with social complexity. So in contrast to other concepts of non-formal education or of education in general, competence-centered education, it deals with socio-political topics and with social complexity. And so we should not try to exclude it from other learning opportunities. We should welcome it and master that.
Very interesting. In EBSN, we also find it really, really essential to consider the place where people are living their lives and managing their lives. The context is vital, and also this sense of reflection that you refer to is also of key importance. We can see some policies that describe active citizenship as a competence, most notably the lifelong learning competencies, the key competencies for lifelong learning, but also it appeared in the action plan for basic skills. Um, as far as I could see, these policies set out a wide and complex definition that may include this reflective nature of the learning process and also the social complexity. In your experience, perhaps, are we overlooking something in these policies? Is there something missing or?
I see a little bit a contradiction of definitions and
Uh,
activities, especially in the EU field. So the basic skills action plan you're referring to, or the key competencies of lifelong learning, um, they are their general problem is that they have a quite cognitive understanding, or promoting a quite cognitive understanding of citizenship, because it's always grounded in an, I am quoting it, understanding of social, economic, legal, and political structures. This involves understanding and evaluation. Okay,
mm,
that is a little bit critical thinking. What we are not promoting, and not by accident, is participation, civil courage. So all these really active components, we are promoting it in other sectors. We want active employees. We want
mm,
people that are making an active path towards reskilling. We should also do that in this field. So there I see a contradiction, and
mm,
I'm asking myself also when I'm looking in the educational discourses and the political discourses in Europe, and our problems with polarization and with shrinking civic spaces, if there is political strength and courage to strengthen, let's say, this more participatory idea of democracy. It is necessary because we have shrinking spaces. We are talking about uh, democratic resilience, and it cannot only be provided by institutional security and guarantees. There must be, let's say, a democratic spirit, and it
mm,
cannot be. We need to address the adult, not only focus with nice and interesting projects on the youth, like we do
mm,
with media pedagogy or so.
mm,
But it's also mainly adults that have to deal with information disorder, digitalization of their jobs, the impact of war and peace, displacement, um, conspiracy theories, people in their community breaking away. So I think we are not talking about teaching in a traditional way, but offering
mm.
learning opportunities for this.
Mm.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like it's also a value-based teaching practice. When you mentioned, I like this term, the spirit of democracy or the democratic spirit. It's really hard to pinpoint in a or define in a policy document regarding competencies and skills only. Um, so that also shows the complexity, the social complexity that you refer to, and it's also a challenge for teachers to address, or adult trainers to address the democratic spirit or how to pass on that. But I think you mentioned that also a keyword, participation, um, helping adults to participate actively and responsibly in everyday life, not only for workplace but also for quality life. That is also the thematic focus of EPALE's work this year.
Mhm.
I understand we have some comments already, quite a few from EPALE, and we have one from Johanni addressing the role of adult educators. Johanni Larjanko's comment. Are adult educators too focused on defending their own self image as champions of democracy to critically reflect on their potential role in society's growing polarization? I found this question really, really interesting and thought provoking. So thank you, Johanni, for sharing that. It's very useful for the discussion today. What are your views, Niels?
Naja, I like the question on the one hand. because the question is, what is the role of the educator and the facilitator in processes? And it cannot be the champion talking to the juniors. So that is not the role. And we have another problem rather in Europe, that people are so there is a kind of, let's say, neutralization tendency. Everything what is talking about human rights, rule of law, pluralism, that we have a let's say polemical argument against teachers or facilitators or educators that are bringing these topics in. And like you say, the rule of law, so the basic principles of the European Union, we are not neutral to them, we are loyal to them, even as a math teacher. So especially as somebody who is doing education for democratic citizenship, human rights education. But you cannot we are not priests. We are not the preachers of the human rights. That is a very old-fashioned role that, much far behind the quality standards in the field. And nobody can be an expert for democracy. Even politicians cannot be. The more complex society is, the more transnational nature the big societal issues are. Nobody is really a democracy champion, and nobody has ever been. So if somebody would like to discuss the question to which extent so what is expertise in the democratic field, that would be the right question. And so learners should not expect from seminars or trainings that they are teaching them how to master democracy. And teachers, facilitators should not choose this career path when they think that they can be excellent preachers. Then they should go somewhere else.
I wonder if such place exists at all. But this question, I find it really valuable because it calls the attention to, first of all, polarization, and through polarization, maybe meaningful participation and basically the agency. Are we doing it right? Are we doing enough? Are we doing meaningful contribution in the right way to see the global perspective? This also adds to the social complexity that you refer to. We also have a comment from Mariella addressing projects Erasmus Plus mobility. And she asks, could active citizenship in adult education be best promoted through non-formal learning, debates, literacy experiences like Erasmus Plus mobility? Or can we actually create some synergies as well with formal, non-formal, informal institutions? How do you see that based on your experiences?
I would say yes. So like I said, the largest ground where people make these experiences, also positive experiences towards other people, and reasoning about democracy, human rights, politics, where all should go, takes place outside of formal education. So non-formal education is the field that is theoretically best able to fit, because it's somehow intended learning, but it is open for learning opportunities that appearing in a process. It is not bound to very strong validation systems. So we are open for experiences that come up in a space. And non-formal education is able to connect to VET work contexts, to formal contexts, to build connections to other contexts, because we are not, our weakness not to be a strong pillar of policy is maybe in this field our strength. I would see a strong opportunity also when I'm looking back in the LICIAL project about linking citizenship and employability. I would share one example. Let's say you are a woman of 45 years and coming back after your children grew, you want to come back, and then you have or you are a migrant coming to a country and you're speaking not the language, then it's a basic skill to learn the language, okay, but that does not mean that you are stupid in all other domains. You have experiences, and now Now there are different opportunities in the society. There are a civil society, other networks. There are maybe volunteering community projects. There is a formal path, go to school or to higher education organization, or there's a kind of employment VET scheme. So, and depending for, or there is maybe also a funding, a grant for self-employment. It's sometimes accidentally how your career path goes. If you are landing in an NGO, or if you are landing in your running your own business after 2 years, 3 years. But the skills, the transversal competences that you need, these are addressed in all of these domains. So it is overcoming ambiguity, becoming familiar with language, the social competence is becoming really a hard competence in this way, to find access to this to the support systems, seeing the opportunities that are around you. And so I think that's a partnership around the transversal competencies. Yeah.
That's very enlightening and very interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Niels, for joining us today. We are going to share the contact information and also the website link in the forum discussion, so our audience can engage with your work and results and your network in general as well. So thank you very much again for joining us.
Thank you.
So after this global perspective, now we are turning on to a more country-specific perspective in adult literacy. And I would like to welcome Aoife Crawford and Margaret Murray from the National Adult Literacy Agency from Ireland. Aoife is a research and policy officer with the agency, and Margaret is working as a literacy student and development officer. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. So after we had a very interesting discussion with Niels about these topics, and we can see that the audience are also quite active in this topic, I'm going to turn to Aoife and ask, why is it relevant at all to talk about citizenship and active citizenship in adult learning, and especially with adult learning strategies and policies?
Sure, thanks so much for having us here today. Just to introduce NALA briefly, we're the National Adult Literacy Agency in Ireland. And so we are called an agency, but we're actually a membership organisation, like a non-governmental organisation and charity. And we would see ourselves as the independent voice of adult literacy in Ireland. And we work in literacy, numeracy, digital literacy, and we work in a range of areas. I do research and policies. That's what I'm going to be talking about today, and then passing to Margaret to talk about the reality on the ground of what is actually happening. So yes, citizenship is so important in, I would say, all adult learning. I mean, it's kind of empowering people as citizens really is a natural, I think, effect of all adult learning, I would say, no matter what the topic is. And I think it's particularly important in adult literacy for us. If you think about how adult literacy is based in the works of like Paulo Freire, in the pedagogy of the oppressed, this idea that you're not just giving people these kind of practical skills, even though those are very useful and really helpful to people, but it's also about empowering people to kind of be aware, to engage in society, to question maybe things that are going wrong around them, and to really like participate in their democracy. So I think the word empowerment probably is at the core of it. Yeah. And it's about, I suppose, making sure that like there's equal opportunities for people to really engage in democracy and to realize those rights. Because some people maybe did not have a great experience of education the first time round. They might have found it very disempowering, actually. And it's about, I suppose, giving people that chance throughout their lives. So if I may, I'm only going to mention a few. I'm going to mention statistics maybe once, but the recent PIAC, or the OECD Survey of Adult Skills, which was run in 2023, was really interesting and eye-opening, perhaps not surprising. It's always good to have evidence of what we know, which is that people who have what we would call literacy or numeracy needs, so maybe they're at kind of the lower level on the scale of those skills, And in Ireland, that's 1 in 5 people.
Mm.
They are more likely to have low social trust, so like trust in other people around them. They're more likely to have a low sense of what is called political efficacy. Not a very plain language term, but essentially it's about do people believe that they have a say in what the government does? And if you have low literacy, you're more likely to have a low belief that really you can impact these things. And you're also more likely to never volunteer. So there's a really clear relationship there between like adult literacy, adult learning, and these kind of citizenship behaviors and beliefs, attitudes. Yeah.
So can we say that those who are more in need of literacy training are more exposed to fake news or polarization or
yes, there's certainly more likely to really kind of believe, like to have a sense that maybe there's no point in engaging, I think would be the way I would interpret it, you know. Although like, because you just don't have a sense that kind of the society is there serving you, you know, and you don't have that trust like in institutions. Certainly, yeah, I think there's practical reasons why media literacy would be really important, this idea of and digital literacy, that you're able to kind of critically engage with things that you see online, that you're not just sort of taking things at face value, or you're not just kind of believing something that somebody said to you down the pub, you know. That you're able to look at different sources, and yes, that is an important aspect of it. Yeah, but I think we would really tie it to the kind of inequalities, the wider inequalities these people experience. It all comes together, and education, I suppose, is a way of fighting that and empowering people again. If I might mention just one organisation in Ireland, we've worked a little bit. Well, the Electoral Commission is a new body in Ireland since 2023, and their job is partly to just make sure the process of elections runs properly, but they also are there to sort of encourage people to engage in voting more, and they have recognised the importance of adult education, like they are developing an education and engagement strategy for all ages, and they did consult with the public on that, and they have been engaged with us. Like, say, they've appeared at some of our events and things. Like, they're really keen to see how like adult learning can help to engage adults in voting in particular. Yeah.
That's very interesting, and it just makes me think of the social complexity that Niels was also referring to, of this nature with active citizenship as a competence, and what you just mentioned, the implications of the PIAC results in Ireland. Now, I'm just wondering, how can we address that as in a strategy, in a national policy? Do you have some examples from Ireland?
I do, yeah. I have some examples of how it's currently, what we currently have in Ireland, exactly, yes, yeah. And I hope you don't mind, I might read a couple of quotes off the screen here, and that's why I'm looking away. So there's three very relevant strategies for adult learning in Ireland at the moment, and they all mention citizenship, and they do have some good aspirations in this area. I think the question really is kind of around implementation, as always. So say the umbrella strategy is our further education and training strategy. So that's VET. I think it would be called VET in a lot of European countries, vocational education. It's essentially the same thing. And in their vision, they talk about how VET will empower learners to participate fully in society and to become active citizens and drive vibrant and diverse communities. That's really strong, the idea of active citizens and how that feeds into communities. But that strategy is 2020 to 2024, and we're still waiting on the new one. So there's always challenges with these things. We're currently between strategies. We are lucky to have a 10-year strategy, which is for adult literacy specifically, called Adult Literacy for Life. And they are very aware of how the learner, like literacy, sits in all these different domains, including society and citizenship. So that's very clear as well. And they have taken some actions, for example, a media literacy campaign last year. And they have a collaboration and innovation fund, which is for like small local projects. And some of those have addressed active citizenship, which I think Mark will talk a little bit about in a minute. And then finally, last but in fact, I think definitely not least, we have a community education framework. And it's interesting that citizenship is probably stronger in this community education strategy than it is in the other ones. That goes to show that importance. I know Neil's talked about informal learning, like this community education sector where it's not all about qualifications. It's a lot, very, very learner-centered. You really see it very strongly here. They have a whole section on active citizenship and social cohesion, putting those two things together, and they talk about how it's more important than ever in the current context, with polarization, that community education's role in this is acknowledged. And I think perhaps community education sometimes suffers from not being taken as seriously as other aspects of education because it's not about qualifications and progression up a ladder that you can measure, but it's absolutely crucial. Yeah.
That's very interesting, and what can be the advantage of the adult learning sector can be also the disadvantage when we think about this aspect. But what you mentioned about the literacy for life strategy as a whole of a government approach, what makes it a whole of a government approach?
Yes, no, thanks. Yeah, the idea of the adult literacy for life strategy really is about sort of bringing together all the different players involved in adult literacy, because it's so complex and it affects so many different areas of life. So like they have set up sort of governance bodies which include representatives from most of the government departments, so it's not just the Department of Further Education. They're saying, no, we're bringing in health, we're bringing in education for younger people, we're bringing in social protection. Like there's a lot of people around the table, and also not just from government, but also from, say, civil society, and which is a real strength of it. I think the challenge is perhaps that when there is, so it depends on the minister, shall I say, and when there is like kind of maybe that lack political leadership from the top, then that is, then you think you need that to really bring people together.
But I really like this term, this whole of the government approach, because this shows an integrative approach that tries to grasp this complexity, this social complexity, and all kinds of complexity that evolves around this in this topic. Thank you very much, Aoife. And as you also referred to, now we're going to ask Margaret how the implementation of such strategies goes, or as you put it, Aoife, how it turns out in practice. As a student and development officer, what are your experiences, Margaret? How do active citizenship programs work and look like in Ireland?
Yeah, I think there isn't a kind of systematic inclusion of active citizenship in adult education work or adult literacy work across the board, but there tends to be a bit more standalone projects rather than sort of integrated into all. Now, having said that, a good adult literacy work would include it because issues come up, and issues come up within whether you're doing one-to-one tuition or group tuition, and issues to do with democracy do come up, and it's how that sort of worked then beyond that. But from the point of view of, say, responsibility or making sure it's done, I don't think it's there systematically, if you like, as it's not measured or looked at in a very, so yourself when you're under pressure, maybe trying to follow, but I think where, like Nala would say that, we've guidelines for good adult literacy work, and we'd say, that it should be learner-led, and so I think when there's a learner-centered approach, it will be discussed, issues will be discussed. It might depend if a tutor's got a particular interest in it as well, that they would do programs. We do have one fantastic project called the Dublin Adult Learning, from the Dublin Adult Learning Centre, and it's a voter education program within adult education and with the background of adult literacy. So it's a very good project. I might tell you a bit about that in a minute. But in terms of how things are implemented, the other thing would be, say, you could have a tutor who, I just met one tutor who said the more, they didn't want to discuss kind of things like that because, this is about a safe space and creating a safe space for people within the community. So of course it does depend on the context and perhaps the pressures that people are under, be it from their organization or when it's not a priority, if you like, but also depending on the geography situation of where and what issues are out there, and how whether the tutor feels empowered or not themselves to handle issues or to discuss issues. So I think that's a very important. It's a little bit reflective of the comment you had at this earlier, about whether. So it depends. Sometimes it depends, but there is certain examples of say, there's one locally to be that has a module, fitted in about challenging discrimination in Lee Shoffley. They have a module in a program of general learning at level 3. So, there are some aspects, and we've other organisations, and we've done a bit of work ourselves. And AINTAS, the adult education organisation in Ireland, would have done programs as well, on voter education with the Dublin Adult Learning Centre, and both NALA and AINTAS and a few other organisations have, the Dublin Adult Learning Centre have produced booklets, I have a few here of say how to fight that's false information, and there's another one here on fake news, and they actually produce these as they can produce them quite quickly and have a website where so there's a lot of resources there. We put that in the chat later on. We would have had something like questions matter as a kind of critical thinking. AINTAS have used storytelling as well to connect with communities, and we've done work with, Aoife mentioned the Electoral Commission on, we had a webinar about the presidential election, and they would have come along, and that was for adult literacy students. So but I suppose in terms of your question, this it's not systematic across the board. That'd be my.
Very interesting. And from what you mentioned, one thing becomes clear, that the role of the tutor is essential. The personality of the tutor, and also his or her role in the classroom, whether it's a group-based learning setting or it's one-on-one tutoring. I can understand that. You mentioned a very interesting, amongst others, a very interesting initiative with Voters Education. Can you tell us a little bit about the format of this training program?
Yeah, it's really participative would be, the first thing, and I suppose learner-led. So they look at who's in front of us, who's in the room, and obviously, for any program, the first job is to get people in the room. So they're located in a community setting, with adult literacy programs going on, but they do a lot of outreach to lots of other groups as well. So they're really good at connecting with other groups that are, and I suppose that's a key factor, isn't it, with all adult learning, that you maybe go where people are at, already, or you might use intermediaries of so if you're trying to reach a particular group, that there might be somebody that group trusts and has a relationship with already. So you link in with them as a start. But then when I think when they start the work, then it's the people in front of them, and you're creating a safe environment where there's no stupid questions. You're starting at the very basics as well, but you're giving people good information, good kind of, you're exploring maybe what is democracy, and maybe what the opposite of democracy is, because there's a lot of jargon we all use, and a lot of people don't understand things from, they just hear words and go, oh, that I know that area or something, but I don't, people don't really know. So so starting from the basics. So when we did a webinar about the presidential election ourselves, say, and we would have said, have you any questions about the presidential election? Have you any questions about it? So But yeah, so it's, I suppose, highly participative and adult-led. I think that's, and I suppose it's about maybe, as Aoife said as well, and Neil said as well, it's about kind of I suppose empowering people, to that they can, because it's a massive thing if people feel that they can ask questions in a, people don't always feel they can do that in a safe space, and then that can transfer to other aspects of your life, Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for telling us all these details. Definitely, this is a very interesting format and training type as Waters Education, and these are very valuable thoughts. Now I have the feeling that we have described a very complex situation when it comes to rooting democracy in adult learning in general, and we have a comment from Linda. A question that can be a very nice final question to all of us. Could adult education be an easy way to strengthen democracy? Is there a shortcut in adult education to boost the democratic spirit, as Niels also formed it? What are your feelings about this? If I'm also asking you.
Yeah. Well, my first thought is, Margaret, you may have more to add, but I'd say it's in a very effective way, but I don't think it's easy. You're trying to reach often maybe marginalized groups. You're underfunded and underappreciated as a sector, and adults have very busy lives, and you have to draw them in. So I would say, I wouldn't say it was easy, personally.
Yeah, and I just add to that particularly with more isolated groups who feel like time is very important to build trust, and that doesn't happen overnight, and you need support from your organization that this will take, like, in a time way, like, because if you call and people are mad busy doing something, like the best, I have a community work background, but the best community worker I ever met came to the door and I said, "How'd you get on today?" I was working in a project and she was out doing more outreach work, and she said, "No, I couldn't do anything today, Margaret. There was and she told me a few stories of what was going on in people's lives. So she just couldn't do anything at that particular time." And that happens with this kind of work as well. I think if you're working with marginalized groups, somebody has either passed away or somebody is, and or somebody's in trouble, or, yourself, like, life gets in the way. So you can't, for funders or for organizations that can look like you're maybe not doing anything or something, but so I think organizations need to like, going back to this not being a mainstream thing, it's sort of there, but I do think it is there with good tuition, but it may not be always valued by funders as an important, if it's not named as well, sometimes it's kind of an extra thing you're doing. So and I know it's named in the national strategies, but it may not be named in the intermediary, as a kind of policy, we're trying to build democracy, by, say, in the local education projects, or even the regional education projects may not be named there as a sort of thing we're doing. So yes, but time is and I suppose timing for people as well is important. Like, if there's an election coming up, people might be more interested at that particular time than if not, so where you hit how you engage people, how you interest people at a particular time is also important. Yeah.
Wow, thank you very much for these thoughts. I would like to thank you, Eva, Margaret, for joining us, and Niels, if you're still with us, I would also like to thank you for joining our video stream. I think it's a very complex topic, and it describes the social complexity, as you also put it, Niels. So there's a lot to talk about, and now we are turning to our participants, our audience. We are going to continue the forum discussion until 4 o'clock. And please feel free to share your thoughts, any examples that build on citizenship in adult learning programs from your professional network, any other innovative pedagogical approaches that can promote active citizenship, or any partnerships that you have learned about or created or took part in, focusing on active citizenship in general. So thank you very much, Aoife, Margaret, Niels. We really appreciate your presence here, and let's continue the discussion.
Thanks.
Thank you.